Hey, all right, we're doing this again. This is exciting stuff. Just for anybody that's watching like the full version, I'm Leslie Vitale with Keller Williams Realty. This is Two Mullins with Jet Home Loans, and we have worked together for the better part of 20 years. Like you were one of my, you're like my mortgage loan officer husband, my work
Long term.
husband. Um,
Yes.
Yeah. And
Love
so
it.
we're excited to come talk about Hometown Heroes funds have been announced, the release, and there's changes this year, which is really good because it is free money. I mean, not quite. It's not exactly free money, but it's super close. And it's an amazing program for first time home buyers for very and we're back to it actually being, which I like, for Hometown Heroes, where it had been opened up to kind of anybody before. I think getting back to the roots of the intention of it is really good.
For sure.
But yeah, so we're looking at it's not quite free money, but it's close. And let's talk about what that means.
It is close. I mean, it's a good way if you're a first time buyer, which by definition means that you are someone who's purchasing a home who in the most recent 3 years have not owned a primary residence. So you're purchasing a home and your intention is to live there as your primary residence. This can be, any type of eligible home for a residential mortgage, single family, 1 through 4 units, condo, townhome, and again, got to be your primary residence. And what the program allows is the state of Florida to provide funds to the buyer equal to 5% of whatever their loan amount is. So if I'm taking a mortgage out for $400,000, that means that we can reserve $20,000 from the state that can be used to cover minimal down payment expenses and closing costs. So that's essentially a $20,000 credit and offsets dollar for dollar money that the buyer otherwise would have to bring to closing that they would need for the
Yeah.
transaction. So it's a great way to help more people get into their first house. I mean, the biggest barrier oftentimes is the down payment.
Mhm.
This is a way to allow a good number of people who are working in some positions that we'll talk about here in a minute or are members of the military to take advantage of that and kind of ease the first steps to get into home ownership.
But I've got a question about that actually, because I've got a lot of sellers right now. I mean, we've got inventory sitting on the market, and our market is not dead, but it's definitely slower than we would like it to be. We're definitely kind of I think we can comfortably say we're in a buyer's market, and certainly for most types of properties. So I have a lot of sellers that are interested in helping you buy their home, right? So they're offering closing cost credits as well. Can you take
Right.
advantage of both of those things if you're using this program?
Yes, yes, you
Okay.
can negotiate, your purchase as you otherwise normally would. You can take advantage of anything that a seller's offering, or if you want to negotiate to try to get some additional seller concession to use towards your closing costs, you can do that. If that is the case, that means that the money that you'd be, receiving from the state, a larger portion of that could be used to make a more impactful down payment, which
Awesome.
is nice
Okay.
because you're borrowing less money. So that means your loan amount's lower and your payment effectively is going to be less as a result of that. You're also allowed to combine the money with money you may already have. You've got some money saved up if you're going to purchase a home. A lot of folks they do that. They're able to use this money, combine it with the money that they already have, and do the same thing. Make a more impactful down payment so they're borrowing less, and setting up a payment from day one that's in the range that they're comfortable with.
All right. Very cool. Well, on that note, like maybe we can move on to that. I mean, like that's huge. And I actually wasn't sure about the down payment thing because we've been in a market when you and I have talked about this before. We've been in markets where you're not necessarily getting that closing cost credit because they didn't have to. But now,
Right.
my sellers are raising their hand going, no, 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 what do I need to do to make this easier for you? So that's
Right.
fantastic. Um,
Sure.
All right. So, but it is a little tighter this year. Like they've limited the professions back to what the actual intent of the Hometown Heroes is. Let's talk a little bit about who can use this program.
Right. So who are, who's eligible, right? So we said first time buyers, right? You've got to be someone that's purchasing a home for the first time, or if you're active duty, military, or prior military, there's an exemption towards being a first time buyer. But other than that, there is a requirement for what you're going to be doing as far as occupation. So the occupations are limited to I shouldn't say limited. It's pretty fairly broad
Right.
when we look at it across the board. Um, I like to think of it as, categories of healthcare workers. These are people, in regardless of the profession, has to be someone working full time, whatever that is, determined by the employer, not necessarily 35 or 36 or 40 hours a week, but whatever the employer says is full time, working at a brick and mortar establishment somewhere within the state. So, if you're a registered nurse or a nurse tech or a CNA, or just to cover the medical aspect, think tech in terms of anything as far as the medical side goes, whether it's an x-ray tech or a lab tech or a pharmacy tech, any
Mhm.
one of these professions that there are very numerous where they branch off would qualify for this. Also eligible are first time or first responders, your paramedics, your firefighters, sworn law enforcement, court workers, corrections officers. All of these folks are also eligible. They include education as well. So all things school, top to bottom, from the principal to the staff to the guidance counselors, the social workers, the school nurse, the cafeteria workers, the teachers themselves. So all things in that sector also included in the umbrella to cover those and several others that I didn't list there. But if you have any question or if you're anything adjacent to that, you can reach out to us and we can verify that. And if it is adjacent and they're working in those spaces, my experience has been, if it's not something that's to the letter as far as what's on the requirements, we've contacted the state numerous times over the last several years about this, and can get a description of what they're doing. And if it's if you're working in the classroom, for example,
Mhm.
and you're a teacher assistant,
Like
maybe
a
you're not
parapro
the
or something.
person.
Yeah.
Correct,
Yeah.
exactly.
If your paycheck
Um,
comes from helping people, there's a good chance you can get them qualified.
yes,
That,
if
I
you're
mean, does that
working,
sound about
if
right?
sure, if you're in the room, right, where one of these things is happening, some of the things that we've said as far as the profession goes. So that's who's eligible, along with the military, like we said, anyone that's active duty or anyone that was in the military prior that was discharged, anything other than dishonorable would qualify.
Very cool. That's awesome. I mean, that's still a ton of people, but like I said, I feel like those are the right people for this program. There are other programs, and let's be honest, this is not the only program out there. There are bond programs. There are other programs that help
Yes,
other borrowers. This is specifically for those
this is
professions. So
correct.
it's
This is
not, yeah.
specifically for those
Somebody's out
professions.
cold. If
Exactly.
somebody's watching this and they're like, "Well, but I need help too," you've got other stuff for them. This,
Right.
but that's just not this program.
Correct. Yeah, this one's special. It pertains to these people. It's labeled hometown heroes. So you see the list of professions and what these people are doing. So to kind of make it a little bit more special, what's available is a little bit wider. It's a little bit more in terms of what the buyer receives. The 5% up to $35,000 max is yeah. That's
It's a seven
a
hundred thousand
serious
dollar
jump.
house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
I'm like,
there
I
you
had to
know
do the
for
math really quick. I used to be able to do math in my head. I swear I used. Um,
right.
that's 700. That's up to a $700,000 house. Like that is
Yeah.
actually use this real money to help with this stuff. Because like it doesn't help me if it's only for up to $250,000 in this in this day and age. That's not
Right.
that's not really
Yes.
helping. That's not helping the majority of the people. So this
Correct. Yeah, they've done a really good
program
job
covers a
of
lot of people. Yeah.
adjusting for that. The extra time I think that it took to get this out and get it rolled out, looking at some of the changes as far as what they were from previous years, as far as who's eligible, what the amounts are, income limitations, things along those lines have been updated to kind of reflect the picture of what's going on right now.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the amount of funds. And I mean, I heard it said, last year these funds ran out faster than Taylor Swift tickets. So let's talk about that
It's a
because
good
they do.
analogy.
And when are they getting released? And how money is getting released and how long do we think it's going to last?
So it's always hard to say, but you're right. Yeah, last year the funds, there was $100 million that was made available around the first week of July. And I want to say by as we were approaching September, it was you're getting the word that funds are running thin and that there's a countdown in terms of what's available and how this money is reserved. And so you kind of get the urgency factor from that when you're working with people that you want to be able to take advantage of that. We can reserve the money um, directly. I like working with Florida Housing, which is where this money comes from, because from a loan officer perspective, it's very, very simple. I can log in myself and reserve the money for the buyer. It takes about 5 minutes, but we can't do it until they're actually under contract. I have to be able to reference a purchase contract that they have along with the property address so we can see that the house meets the requirements and all the other things. So we can't do it until then. So that's something to be considered. It sounds like the same amount's going to be available this year as far as the $100 million, but it's being limited to these specific occupations. So if anything, I think that might stretch it out a little bit
Hmm.
longer. Last year, I believe it was last year, maybe the last 2 years, it was eligible to any first-time buyer as long as you were working at a brick and mortar in the state. So the money went very fast.
Right.
But limiting it, that gives me the impression it's hard to predict exactly how long it will last, but it gives me the impression that it will last a little bit longer. Than it has maybe the most recent couple of years. But I say that, and you never know because we're always surprised. And if you're looking for a catalyst to motivate somebody that may, this program has a lot of buzz around it. People are familiar with it. This isn't the first year
Yeah.
it's rolled
We've been
out,
doing this
and
for a minute.
people,
Yeah.
yeah,
This is
people,
what, year
yeah.
four? Year
I
five? Year
think well, I
four?
want to say like year 4 or 5, yeah.
Yeah.
So people know about it. People have talked to other people that have taken advantage of it. And I know I've talked to a lot of people this year to date that have asked about it. So it's something that's happening, and people know about it. So it seems to be if you're one of those people that were maybe waiting for something and you're going to time your situation around something like this, I wouldn't be surprised if you see the money start
Well,
to go
yeah,
for pretty
and
quick.
to be honest, I mean, I think this is really good timing when they're releasing this because it's releasing it as we come into the fall market, which tends
Right.
to be softer, which means your sellers are more motivated. Like it gives you so much buying power from a buyer perspective. For these people that are qualifying for this program, it puts them in such an amazing position to buy a house now because like they will never have, wait, combined with this and the motivation of the seller, like you've got massive motivation on the seller end to help you buy these homes and get in for, something reasonable. So,
For sure.
and we've got inventory sitting there. We've got
Right.
just under, I just looked at it this morning, we've got almost, not quite 11,000 properties sitting on the market in Northeast Florida, which sounds like a lot. We also have a big area that we cover with a lot of people that is not a ridiculous amount of properties. That's about, I would say, roughly the right number of properties, right, to be available on the market.
Okay.
But as we come into this fall selling season, it's slower and sellers are motivated. So
Right.
combine the seller motivation with this program, and you're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. Okay. Creates a storm to where, yeah, things
Yeah,
can happen, to
yeah,
help people out.
absolutely. All right.
So let's talk about how the money works. And we talked about free versus repayable, the cost structure, and all that stuff. So
Yes.
the mechanism for the money, right? Let's use the same example from before. If you take a loan out for $400,000, we can reserve $20,000 that the buyer can use towards their down payment and closing costs. That money is going to be enough to cover a minimal down payment, which is somewhere somewhere between 3 and 3.5% of whatever the purchase price is. Or if you're a veteran, 0%, right? So VA
Mhm.
is eligible for this program too. So whatever's used towards the minimal down payment, the remainder can be used towards the closing costs. Well, that $20,000, it is repayable, and so it has to be repaid. It is considered a loan, but it's recorded as a second mortgage at 0% interest with no payment due monthly. So the question then becomes, well, how does it get paid back, or when does it get paid back? Well, it's based on a 30-year loan, a 30-year term. So you have to pay the money back under a few different circumstances. The first is if you ever sell the house. You're going to live there as your primary residence. That's the whole basis for the program, is to help people get into owner-occupied homes. If you are to sell the home at any time, a year after you purchase it, 11 years after you purchase it at any time, and you still have the loan set up the way you did at purchase, you have to pay it back and include it with your payoff of your first mortgage. So the idea is that you're going to be making payments towards your balance, your mortgage balance, and in theory, the home's going to appreciate a little bit
Right.
over time. And when you sell the home, you can then use the equity that you've acquired during that time to pay off the balance of your loan plus the initial $20,000 that was used towards or from the program. So that's one instance. Another instance that you have to pay it off is if you ever restructure the loan, meaning that you refinance it.
Mhm.
If we're able to take advantage down the road, if somebody wants to restructure their loan to a shorter term, or maybe they have more equity down the road and they have different needs and they want to take some cash out, you can do that, pay off your first mortgage. You have to pay off the second, the $20,000 example from the money that we receive from the state. That's got to be included as well. And then we restructure a new loan. So that's another instance. And then the last that I'll mention is that if the home is no longer going to be used as your primary residence, meaning that you bought it and you used the program, but a day comes to where you're going to vacate the home, but not sell the house. So you still own it, but you're not going to live there. The loan itself then can be called due because the intention for the program again is to be set up for primary residence. So, say for example, you were to purchase another home
Mhm.
somewhere in the state or somewhere else that you homestead, and this is no longer your homestead, then the loan can be called due.
Well,
So the
that's
idea
important.
would,
Yeah, because I work with military people that are, that are very savvy, that know they're going to get
yeah,
deployed, and their strategy, over their lifetime is to buy a home in every location that they end up deployed and then leasing it out. Like that's a good, solid investment strategy. But yeah, but they need to be aware that if they do that, they are going to have to, they're going to have to pay that back when they like.
I
I don't know
think
how that works.
a good strategy around that would be that you can see this coming ahead, right? This isn't something towards like I wake up today and I have to vacate. No, you're going to have a little bit of lead time to know that that day's coming.
Mhm.
And what we can do is look at ways to restructure the loan prior to
Pay that
doing that.
back, and then you're all good.
I think
But
that's a good way to do it.
in a perfect universe, lower the interest rate. Like, let's hope that that's what happens at the time. Nobody's.
Absolutely, try to get all the benefit that you can, right, out of restructuring when it's time to do that.
I love it. All right. Well, and finally, let's kind of do a little plug for you because not all mortgage lenders are created equal,
Right.
and not everybody fully understands this program. I know you've been dealing with it for a long time, so I mean, maybe give a little bit of,
Yeah.
you know, a little bit of
Yeah,
your
I
process.
think that's a really good point, right? So I started working with first-time buyer programs in about 2016. And the rate environment was really different then. The market was very different, but I saw it as an opportunity where, locally there wasn't, people were asking about things that I felt like were out there that just were a bit underutilized. And so I like, Florida Housing Corporation. That's where this money comes from for Hometown Heroes because it's money that can be used throughout the state of Florida. It doesn't matter where the house, doesn't matter what county the house is in. It doesn't matter what city it's in. It doesn't matter which zip code, anywhere in Florida. So it's very simple, and it's the program requirements are the same regardless of where it's located. And I've spent a lot of time since, over the years learning them inside and out, learning the program guidelines, the specifics to the program, and there are a lot of little details that, a lot of times can often go unspoken about that we're handling behind the scenes, but to make this work. And I think for that as a reason, programs that are intended for down payment assistance aren't always marketed because it may just be something that you're either not familiar with or you're not sure if your company offers. Or I know of a lot of institutions that offer these programs where they're available, but the loan officers there don't market them and they don't utilize them for a lot of reasons. Maybe that's not their market. Maybe they're not familiar with the mechanism behind it. The same way that if you needed a loan for something unique like a construction to perm, you're going to build a house from the ground up.
Mhm.
You want to get with someone and connect with someone that's really familiar with that process and how the mechanism works through the bank to get the
Yeah.
money practically so it actually works the way it's supposed to. Mortgages are unfortunately still to this day a little clunky, so it's important to kind of go about it in order and do the steps right so it works the way that you're intending for it to. So, yeah, getting with the right person that one is familiar with the program, knows what they're doing, and understands the background of the whole thing and who qualifies, who doesn't, and just how to take advantage of it and move it quickly is really important.
Super important. Absolutely. And yeah, you and I both love our first time home buyers. It's one of the reasons we work so well together. So I love
Absolutely.
it. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. I'm excited, and this money rolls out when?
Next week.
All
So
right.
that's going to be a week from today. I think that's what the 18th. So anyone, that's, I mean, it's a, would think of it as if it's available today, right? Because if I
Yeah.
was looking at a house over this weekend, yesterday or the day before, the prior week, and you're going under contract, even if you go under contract today, the money can be reserved next week. So,
Yeah.
call it in
And
play right
you know
now if
what it is
you're,
up front. So that's awesome. Well,
yes.
fantastic. I really appreciate your time. This is awesome.
Yeah, glad we did this.
Me
It's
too.
a good time.
All right. And I will talk to you soon.
See you next time.